We are also watching the headlines that rise out of this map. Of course, you're looking at this large swath of land called Venezuela. The big headline, a bipartisan call by lawmakers wanting to know if a deadly U.S. boat strike rose to the level of a war crime. Here is the strike. Let's set the scene just a little bit here. The Washington Post report claims that a U.S. strike in September left 2 survivors holding onto the side of a boat. Well, to comply with the directive from Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth to, quote, kill them all, a commander reportedly ordered a second strike to kill those survivors. Now Democratic Senator Tim Kaine says he is among many who want answers.
If that reporting is true, it's a clear violation of the DOD's own laws of war, as well as international laws about the way you treat people who are in that circumstance. And so this rises to the level of a war crime if it's true. And the questions that we've been asking for months are, give us the evidence that the folks on board were really narco traffickers.
So let's go live to CBS News Pentagon reporter Eleanor Watson. So Eleanor, you heard him there say if this reporting is true, he seems like he wants direct, concrete evidence. So what is the process here to see if this meets the threshold of a war crime?
Well, Senator Tim Kaine Reed is not alone. As you mentioned, both the House and Senate Armed Services Committee, led by Republicans, have promised to look into these allegations reported by the Washington Post. The strike under scrutiny is the September 2nd strike that killed individuals and, reported by the Post, left 2 survivors that necessitated a follow-on strike to kill those 2 survivors clinging to a boat. The law of armed conflict says that wounded and injured survivors should not be targeted because they no longer pose a threat. They should be rescued and cared for. We've seen that law, that protocol followed in subsequent strikes like the October 16th strike that killed 2 individuals but also left 2 survivors who were then rescued by the Navy and then repatriated to their home countries of Ecuador and Colombia. The scrutiny on this September strike is not the only thing Congress is asking for more information on. As Senator Kaine suggested, Congress also wants to hear more about this campaign as a whole that has now targeted over 20 vessels and killed over 80 individuals.
Okay, so this puts that white-hot spotlight on, of course, Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth. What is he saying?
Well, Secretary Hegseth has slammed the reporting, saying in an ex post, the fake news is delivering more fabricated, inflammatory, and derogatory reporting. But he did not specifically address the detail about a follow-on strike that the Washington Post reports he ordered to make sure that everyone on board the vessel was killed. President Trump, when asked about the allegations yesterday, said he would not have wanted a second strike and claims that Secretary Hegseth told him that it did not happen. Since then, Secretary Hegseth has doubled down on the Pentagon's targeting of these alleged drug vessels, saying in a separate ex post that we have only just begun to kill the narco-terrorists.
Eleanor Watson, thank you so much for that. Meanwhile, President Donald Trump says he has great confidence in Mr. Hegseth. In fact, our own Weijia Jiang, traveling with the president aboard Air Force One, asked Mr. Trump about those strikes. Listen.
Well, number one, I don't know that happened. And Pete said he did not want them. He didn't even know what people were talking about. So we'll look into it. But no, I wouldn't have wanted that. Not a second strike. The first strike was very lethal. It was fine, and if there were 2 people around, but Pete said that didn't happen.
Does that make you?
I have great confidence.
You saying there's no second strike?
I don't know. I'm going to find out about it, but Pete said he did not order the death of those 2 men.
Do you have any concerns about how those boat strikes have been carried out at all?
Very little, because you can see the boats, you can see the drugs in the boats, and each boat is responsible for killing 25,000 Americans. So. And they're doing an amazing job. And you know, you just look at the numbers. The amount of drugs coming into our country by sea is infinitesimal compared to what it was just a few months ago.
On immigration,
and each boat, think of this, each boat on average is responsible for the death of 25,000 Americans.
So let's take the conversation to the White House and CBS News Chief White House correspondent Nancy Cordes. A lot of reporting here, Nancy. The president says that he himself would not have wanted that second strike. Where do you see the scrutiny on that point today when the president says he'd like to find out?
Well, members of Congress say they want to find out. And what's so unusual about this situation
Reed, is that you now have the Republican-led Senate and House Armed Services Committees demanding answers from the Pentagon and announcing that they are going to be launching investigations. That's really rare. You don't typically see Republicans in Congress holding the Republican-led administration's feet to the fire in quite this way. So the question is, how far are they going to take it? Are they going to demand that the defense secretary come down to Capitol Hill to testify? Are they going to demand that the Pentagon release the video of that second strike if it did occur? One of the things that was frustrating to lawmakers when they heard about this story was that they were briefed about this initial strike when it happened back in September. And Mike Turner, a Republican of Ohio who was on Face the Nation yesterday, told me he wasn't told about this follow-on strike, that they weren't briefed about that. And so there are going to be questions about whether lawmakers got the full story. And that's on top of concerns that lawmakers have already had about the legality of these boat strikes.
Well, there's also the reporting of the president talking about Venezuela's airspace. Who does this apply to, and what's the reasoning behind closing airspace over Venezuela?
That is still a mystery, Reed. The president posted this weekend that airlines and pilots should get out of the way, get out of Venezuelan airspace, basically for their own safety. But then when Ouija asked the president about that on Air Force One last night, he didn't provide any context. Many were wondering if that meant that there was an imminent U.S. military strike about to take place. Take a listen to what she asked him and his response.
Mr. President, on Venezuela, can you tell us more about why the airspace above Venezuela should be considered closed?
Because we consider Venezuela to be not a very friendly country. They send millions of people, really, and probably a number in excess of that. And a lot of those people shouldn't be in our country, from jails, from gangs, from drug dealers, from all of the people that came into our country shouldn't have been in our country, causing a lot of problems.
Does your warning
and drugs.
Does your warning mean that an airstrike is imminent, or should we not read it that way?
Don't read anything into it.
So a pretty vague response there. No real explanation for why he said that airlines should get out of Venezuelan airspace. No indication of an imminent ground strike or strike from the air. But we do know that the president is now planning to meet with cabinet officials, including the defense secretary, here at the White House later on today to discuss the next steps in Venezuela.
All right, Nancy Cordes chasing the answers there and competing with the leaf blower very well behind you, my friend. Good to see you on CBS News 24/7.